Eve's Diary by Mark Twain. This is the second part of my reading of it. Whenever a new creature comes along, I name it before he has time to expose himself by an awkward silence. In this way I have saved him many embarrassments. I have no defect like his. The minute I set eyes on an animal, I know what it is. I don't have to reflect a moment. The right name comes out instantly, just as if it were an inspiration, as no doubt it is, for I am sure it wasn't in me half a minute before. I seem to know just by the shape of the creature and the way it acts what animal it is. When the dodo came along, he thought it was a wildcat. I saw it in its eyes, but I saved him, and I was careful not to do it in a way that could hurt his pride. I just spoke up in a quiet, natural way, of pleased surprise, and not as if I was dreaming of conveying information, and said, "Well, I do declare, if there isn't the dodo," I explained without seeming to be explaining how I knew it for a dodo, and although I thought maybe he was a little piqued that I knew the creature when he didn't, it was quite evident that he admired me. That was very agreeable, and I thought of it more than once with gratification before I slept. How little a thing can make us happy when we feel that we have earned it. Thursday, my first sorrow. Yesterday he avoided me and seemed to wish I would not talk to him. I could not believe it, and I thought there was some mistake, for I loved to be with him, and I loved to hear him talk. And so, could it be that he could feel unkind toward me when I had not done anything? But at last it seemed true, so I went away and sat lonely in the place where I first saw him in the morning that we were made, and I did not know what he was, and was indifferent about him. But now it was a mournful place, and everything little spoke of him, and my heart was very sore. I did not know why very clearly, for it was a new feeling. I had not experienced it before, and it was all a mystery, and I could not make it out. But when night came, I could not bear the lonesomeness, and went to the new shelter which he has built to ask him what I had done, and, what I'd done that was wrong, and how I could mend it and get back his kindness again, that he put me out in the rain, and it was my first sorrow. Sunday. It is pleasant again now, and I am happy, but those were heavy days. I do not think of them when I can help it. I tried to get him some of those apples, but I cannot learn to throw straight. I failed, but I think the good intention pleased him. They are forbidden, and he says I shall come to harm. But so I come to harm through pleasing him. Why shall I care for that harm? Monday. This morning I told him my name, hoping it would interest him, but he did not care for it. It is strange. If he should tell me his name, I would care. I think it would be pleasanter in my ears than any other sound. He talks very little. Perhaps it is because he is not bright, and is sensitive about it, and wishes to conceal it. It is such a pity that he should feel so, for brightness is nothing. It is in the heart that the values lie. I wish I could make him understand that a loving good heart is riches, and riches enough, and that without it, intellect is poverty. Although he talks so little, he has quite a considerable vocabulary. This morning, he used a surprisingly good word. He evidently recognized himself that it was a good one, for he worked it in twice afterward, casually. It was not good casual art, still it showed that he possesses a certain quality of perception. Without a doubt, without a doubt, that seed can be made to grow if cultivated. Where did he get that word? I do not think I have ever used it. No, he took no interest in my name. I tried to hide my disappointment, but I suppose I did not succeed. I went away and sat on the moss bank, with my feet in the water. It is where I go when I hunger for companionship, someone to look at, someone to talk to. It is not enough that lovely white body painted there in the pool, but it is something, and something is better than utter loneliness. It talks when I talk. It is sad when I am sad. It comforts me with its sympathy. It says, "Do not be downhearted, you poor friendless girl. I will be your friend." It is a good friend to me, and my only one. It is my sister. That first time that she forsook me, ah, I shall never forget that, never, never. My heart was lead in my body. I said, she was all I had, and now she is gone. In my despair I said, break my heart. I cannot bear my life any more, and hid my face in my hands, and there was no solace for me. And when I took them away, after a little, there she was again, white and shining and beautiful, and I sprang into her arms. That was perfect happiness. I had not known happiness before, but it was not like this, which was ecstasy. I never doubted her afterward. Sometimes she stayed away, maybe half an hour, maybe almost the whole day, but I waited and did not doubt. I said, she is busy or she has gone a journey, but she will come. And it was so. She always did. At night she would not come if it was dark, for she was a timid little thing. But if there was a moon, she would come. I am not afraid of the dark, but she is younger than I am. She was born after I was. Many and many are the visits I have paid her. She is my comfort and my refuge when my life is hard. And it is mainly that. Tuesday. All the morning I was at work improving the estate, and I purposely kept away from him in the hope that he would get lonely and come, but he did not. At noon I stopped for the day and took my recreation by flitting all about with the bees and the butterflies, and reveling in the flowers, those beautiful creatures that catch the smile of God out of the sky and preserve it. I gathered them and made them into wreaths and garlands and clothed myself in them, while I ate my luncheon, apples of course. Then I sat in the shade and wished and waited. But he did not come. But no matter, nothing would have come of it, for he does not care for flowers. He calls them rubbish, and cannot tell one from another, and thinks it is superior to feel like that. He does not care for me. He does not care for flowers. He does not care for the painted sky at eventide. Is there anything he does care for except building shacks to coop himself up in from the good, clean rain, and thumping the melons, and sampling the grapes, and fingering the fruit on the trees, to see how those properties are coming along? I laid a dried stick on the ground, and tried to bore a hole in it with another one, in order to carry out a scheme that I had, and as soon as I got an awful fright, a thin, transparent, bluish film rose out of the hole, and I dropped everything and ran. I thought it was a spirit, and I was so frightened. But I looked back, and it was not coming, so I leaned against a rock and rested and panted, and let my limbs go on, trembling until they got steady again. Then I crept warily back, alert, watching, and ready to fly if there was occasion. And when I was come near, I parted the branches of a rose bush and peeped through, wishing the man was about. I was looking so cunning and pretty. But the sprite was gone. I went there, and there was a pinch of delicate pink dust in the hole. I put my finger in it to feel it, and said, ouch, and took it out again. It was a cruel pain. I put my finger in my mouth, and by standing first on one foot and then the other, and grunting, I presently eased my misery. Then I was full of interest and began to examine. I was curious to know what the pink dust was. Suddenly the name of it occurred to me, though I had never heard of it before. It was fire. I was as certain of it as a person could be of anything in the world. So without hesitation, I named that fire. I had created something that didn't exist before. I had added a new thing to the world's uncountable properties. I realized this and was proud of my achievement and was going to run and find him and tell him about it, thinking to raise myself in his esteem, but I reflected and did not do it. No, he would not care for it. He would ask what it is good for. And what could I answer? For it was not good for something, but only beautiful, merely beautiful. So I sighed and did not go. For it wasn't good for anything. It could not build a shack. It could not improve melons. It could not hurry a fruit crop. It was useless. It was foolishness and a vanity. He would despise it and say, cutting words. But to me it was not despicable. I said, "Oh, you fire, I love you, you dainty pink creature, for you are beautiful, and that is enough." And I was going to gather it to my breast, but refrained. Then I made another maxim out of my own head, though it was so nearly like the first one that I was afraid it was only a plagiarism. The burnt experiment shuns the fire. I wrought again, and when I had made a good deal of fire dust, I emptied it into a handful of dry brown grass, intending to carry it home and keep it always and play with it. But the wind struck it, and it sprayed up and spat out at me fiercely, and I dropped it and ran. When I looked back, the blue spirit was towering up and stretching and rolling away like a cloud, and instantly I thought of the name of it, smoke, though, upon my word, I had never heard of smoke before. Soon brilliant yellow and red flares shot up through the smoke, and I named them in an instant flames, and I was right too, though these were the very first flames that had ever been in the world. No. People like to think stuff like that when they figure stuff out, but they climbed the trees. They flashed splendidly in and out of the vast and increasing volume of tumbling smoke, and I had to clap my hands and laugh and dance in my rapture. It was so new and strange and so wonderful and so beautiful. He came running and stopped and gazed and said not a word for many minutes. Then he asked what it was. Ah, it was too bad that he should ask such a direct question. I had to answer it, of course, and I did. I said it was fire. If it annoyed him that I should know, and he must ask, that was not my fault. I had no desire to annoy him. After a pause, he asked, how did it come? Another direct question, and it also had to have a direct answer. I made it. The fire was traveling farther and farther off. He went to the edge of the burned place and stood looking down and said, "What are these?" "Fire coals." He picked one up to examine it, but changed his mind and put it down again. Then he went away. Nothing interested him. But I was interested. There were ashes, gray and soft and delicate and pretty. I knew what they were at once, and the embers, I knew the embers too. I found my apples and raked them out and was glad, for I am very young and my appetite is active. But I was disappointed, and they were all burst open and spoiled. Spoiled, apparently, but it was not so. They were better than raw ones. Fire is beautiful. Someday it will be useful, I think. Friday, I saw him again. For a moment, last Monday at nightfall, but only for a moment. I was hoping he would praise me for trying to improve the estate, for I had meant well, and had worked hard. But he was not pleased, and turned away and left me. He was also displeased on another account. I tried once more to persuade him to stop going over the falls. That was because the fire had revealed to me a new passion, quite new, and distinctly different from love, grief, and those others, which I had already discovered, fear. And it is horrible. I wish I had never discovered it. It gives me dark moments. It spoils my happiness. It makes me shiver and tremble and shudder. But I could not persuade him, for he has not discovered fear yet, and so he could not understand me. extract from Adam's diary. Perhaps I ought to remember that she is very young, a mere girl, and make allowances. She is all interest, eagerness, vivacity. The world is to her a charm, a wonder, a mystery, a joy. She can't speak for delight when she finds a new flower. She must pet it and caress it and smell it and talk to it and pour out endearing names upon it. And she is color mad. Brown rocks, yellow sand, gray moss, green foliage, blue sky, the pearl of the dawn, the purple shadows on the mountains, the golden islands floating in the crimson seas at sunset, the pallid moon, sailing through shredded cloud rack, the star jewels glittering in the wastes of space. None of them is of any practical value, so far as I can see, but because they have color and majesty, that is enough for her, and she loses her mind over them. If she could quiet down and keep still a couple of minutes at a time, it would be a reposeful spectacle. In that case, I think I could enjoy looking at her. Indeed, I am sure I could, for I am coming to realize that she is quite remarkably comely creature, lithe, slender, trim, rounded, shapely, nimble, graceful. And once, when she was standing marble white and sun-drenched on a boulder, with her young head tilted back, and her hand shading her eyes, watching the flight of a bird in the sky, I recognized that she was beautiful. Monday noon. If there is anything on the planet that she is not interested in, it is not in my list. There are animals that I am indifferent to, but it is not so with her. She has no discrimination. She talks to all of them. She thinks they are all treasures. Every new one is welcome. When the mighty brontosaurus came striding into camp, she regarded it as an acquisition. I considered it a calamity. That is a good sample of the lack of harmony that prevails in our views of things. She wanted to domesticate it. I wanted to make it a present of the homestead and move out. She believed it could be tamed by kind treatment and would make a good pet. I said a pet 21 feet high and 84 feet long would be no proper thing to have about the place, because even with the best intentions, without meaning any harm, it could sit down on the house and mash it. For anyone could see by the look of its eye that it was absent-minded. Still, her heart was set upon having that monster, and she couldn't give it up. She thought we could start a dairy with it, and wanted me to help her milk it. But I wouldn't. It was too risky. The sex wasn't right. And we hadn't any ladder anyway. Then she wanted to ride it and look at the scenery. 30 or 40 feet of its tail was lying on the ground, like a fallen tree, and she thought she could climb it. But she was mistaken. When she got to the steep place, it was too slick, and down she came, and would have hurt herself but for me. Was she satisfied now? No, nothing ever satisfies her but demonstration. Untested theories are not in her line, and she won't have them. It is the right spirit, I conceded. It attracts me. I feel the influence of it. If I were with her more, I think I should take it up myself. While she had one theory remaining about this colossus, she thought that if we could tame him and make him friendly, we could stand him in the river and use him for a bridge. It turned out that he was already plenty tame enough, at least as far as she was concerned, so she tried her theory, but it failed. Every time she got him properly placed in the river and went ashore to cross over on him, he came out and followed her around like a pet mountain. Like the other animals, they all do that. Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today. All without seeing him. It is a long time to be alone. Still, it is better to be alone than unwelcome. I had to have company. I was made for it, I think. So I made friends with the animals, They are just charming, and they have the kindest disposition and the politest ways. They never look sour. They never let you feel that you are intruding. They smile at you and wag their tail, if they've got one, and they are always ready for a romp or an excursion or anything you want to propose. I think they are perfect gentlemen. All these days we have had such good times, and it hasn't been lonesome for me, ever. Lonesome. No, I should say not. Why, there's always a swarm of them around, sometimes as much as 4 or 5 acres. You can't count them, and when you stand on a rock in the midst and look out over the furry expanse, it is so mottled and splashed and gay with color and frisking sheen and sun flash, and so rippled with stripes that you might think it was a lake, only you know it isn't. And there's storms of sociable birds and hurricanes of whirring wings, and when the sun strikes all that feathery commotion, you have a blazing up of all the colors you can think of, enough to put your eyes out. We have made long excursions, and I have seen a great deal of the world, almost all of it, I think. And so I am the first traveler, and the only one. When we are on the march, it is an imposing sight. There is nothing like it anywhere. For comfort, I ride a tiger or leopard, because it is soft and has a round back that fits me, and because they are such pretty animals. But for long distance or for scenery, I ride the elephant. He hoists me up with his trunk, but I can get off myself when we are ready to camp. He sits, and I slide down the back anyway. I slide down the back way. The birds and the animals are all friendly to each other, and there's no disputes about anything. They all talk, and they all talk to me, but it must be a foreign language, for I cannot make out a word they say. Yet they often understand me when I talk back, particularly the dog and the elephant. It makes me ashamed. It shows that they are brighter than I am, and are therefore my superiors. It annoys me, for I want to be the principal experiment myself. And I intend to be too. I have learned a number of things, and am educated now, but I wasn't at first. I was ignorant at first. I was ignorant at first. At first, it used to vex me, because with all my watching, I was never smart enough to be around when the water was running uphill. But now, I do not mind it. I have experimented and experimented until now I know it never does run uphill except in the dark. I know it does in the dark because the pool never goes dry, which it would, of course, if the water didn't come back in the night. It is best to prove things by actual experiment. Then you know, whereas if you depend on guessing and supposing and conjecturing, you will never get educated. Some things you can't find out, but you will never know. You can't by guessing and supposing. No, you have to be patient and go on experimenting until you can find out that you can't find out. And it is delightful to have it that way. It makes the world so interesting. If there wasn't anything to find out, it would be dull. Even trying to find out and not finding out is just as interesting, and trying to find out and finding out, and I don't know, but more so. The secret of the water was a treasure until I got it. Then the excitement all went away, and I recognized a sense of loss. By experiment, I know that wood swims, and dry leaves and feathers, and plenty of other things. Therefore, by all that cumulative evidence, you know that a rock will swim, but you know that, but you have to put up with simply knowing it. For there isn't any way to prove it up to now, but I shall find a way. Then that excitement will go. Such things make me sad, because by and by, when I have found out everything, there won't be any more excitements. And I do love excitement so. The other night, I couldn't sleep for thinking about it. At first, I couldn't make out what I was made for, but now I think it was to search out the secrets of this wonderful world, and be happy and thank the giver of it all for devising it. I think there are many things to learn yet, I hope so, and by economizing and not hurrying too fast, I think they will last weeks and weeks, I hope so. When you cast up a feather, it sails away on the air and goes out of sight. Then you throw up a clod, and it doesn't. It comes down every time. I've tried it, and it is always so. I wonder why it is. Of course, it doesn't come down, but why should it seem to? I suppose it is an optical illusion, I mean, one of them is. I don't know which one. It may be the feather, it may be the clod. I can't prove which one it is. I can only demonstrate that one or the other is a fake, and let a person take his choice. By watching, I know that the stars are not going to last. I've seen some of the best ones melt and run down the sky. Since one can melt, they can all melt. Since they can all melt, they can all melt the same night. That sorrow will come, I know it. I mean to sit up every night and look at them as long as I can keep awake, and will impress those sparkling fields on my memory, so that by and by, when they are taken away, I can, by my fancy, restore those lovely myriads to the black sky, and make them sparkle again, and double them by the blur of my tears. Now, if I haven't pointed out, Eve's diary starts with the Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today, and the excerpt from Adam's diary ends with the, like all the other animals, they do that. So after the fall, when I took back, the garden is a dream to me. It was beautiful, surpassingly beautiful, enchantingly beautiful, and now it is lost, and I shall not see it any more. The garden is lost, but I have found him, and am content. He loves me as well as he can. I love him with all the strength of my passionate nature, and this I think is proper to my youth and sex. If I ask myself why I love him, I find I do not know, and I do not really much care to know. So I suppose that this kind of love is not a product of reasoning and statistics like one's love for other reptiles and animals. I think this must be so. I love certain birds because of their song, but I do not love Adam on account of his singing. No, it is not that. The more he sings, the more I do not get reconciled to it. Yet I ask him to sing because I wish to learn to like everything he is interested in. I am sure I can learn because at first I could not stand it, but now I can. It sours the milk, but it doesn't matter. I can get used to that kind of milk. It is not on account of his brightness that I love him. No, it is not that. He is not to blame for his brightness, such as it is, for he did not make it himself. He is as God made him, and that is sufficient. Yeah, it's definitely what you do with things, not as much what you have. Of course, what you have matters, but there was a wise purpose in it, that I know. In time, it will develop, though I think it will not hurry, though I think it will not be sudden. And besides, there is no hurry. He is well enough just as he is. It is not on account of his gracious and considerate ways, and his delicacy that I love him. No, he has lacks in these regards, but he is well enough just so, and is improving. It is not on account of his industry that I love him. No, it is not that. I think he has it in him, and I do not know why he conceals it from me. It is my only pain. Otherwise, he is frank and open with me now. I am sure he keeps nothing from me but this. It grieves me that he should have a secret from me, and sometimes it spoils my sleep thinking of it. But I will put it out of my mind. It shall not trouble my happiness, which is otherwise full to overflowing. It is not on account of his education that I love him. No, it is not that. He is self-educated, and does not really know a multitude of things, but they are not so. It is not on account of his chivalry that I love him. No, it is not that. He told on me, but I do not blame him. It is a peculiarity of sex, I think, and he did not make his sex. Of course, I would not have told on him. I would have perished first, but that is a peculiarity of sex too. And I do not take credit for it, for I did not make my sex. Well, it comes to responsibility and all that. I don't think that part's broken up like that, and I could bring up other examples, but then why is it that I love him? Merely because he is masculine? I think. At bottom, he is good, and I love him for that. But I could love him without it. If he should beat me and abuse me, I should go on loving him. I know it. It is a matter of sex, I think. Well, doesn't mean you have to excuse it or let the person get away with it, of course. He is strong and handsome, and I love him for that, and I admire him, and am proud of him. But I could love him without those qualities. If he were plain, I should love him. If he were a wreck, I should love him. And I would work for him, and slave over him, and pray for him, and watch by his bedside until I died. Yes, I think I love him merely because he is mine and he is masculine. There is no other reason, I suppose. And so I think it is, as I first said, that this kind of love is not a product of reasonings and statistics. It is just comes, no one knows whence, and cannot explain itself, and doesn't need to. It is what I think, but I am only a girl and the first that has examined this matter, and it may turn out that in my ignorance and inexperience I have not got it right. 40 years later, it is my prayer, it is my longing that we may pass from this life together, a longing which shall never perish from the earth, but shall have place in the heart of every wife that loves, until the end of time, and it shall be called by my name. But if one of us must go first, it is my prayer that it shall be I, for he is strong, I am weak, I am not so necessary to him as he is to me. Life without him would not be life. How could I endure it? This prayer is also immortal, and will not cease from being offered up while my race continues. I am the first wife, and in the last wife I shall be repeated. At Eve's grave, Adam, wheresoever she was, there was Eden. And we see from the illustration that Adam's wearing clothes now. Well, I mean, then. Of course, this is a fictionalized to drive a point. It's like, well, what if I and my wife were Adam and Eve, and one of the main points is the difference between male and female, I guess. Some of it comes off as a bit sexist, and yeah, but not as much as you would think, because, well, it's not like there's this huge list of differences and it's always this, always that. No. But there are differences, and that's the point that we should get from stories like this.